Have you ever felt the strange emptiness of simply existing, going through days as if life were a routine you never chose, a story you didn't write? Most of us think that being alive means doing, achieving, or surviving, as if life's purpose is hidden somewhere outside ourselves in wealth, status, or approval from others. Yet this common understanding is a shadow, a mistake that blinds us to the living pulse beneath it all. What we call life is often reduced to a sequence of tasks, obligations, and distractions, and in this reduction we forget the raw, unfiltered presence of being here, of actually existing. You might glance around, watching the world chase itself, and wonder if this is all there is, if everyone else knows a secret that you're too busy, too distracted, or too scared to see. But the truth, as simple and shocking as it seems, is that being alive is not about achieving, not about conquering or resisting, and certainly not about fixing what seems broken in your life. Life is not a problem to solve. It is a sensation, a movement, a constant dance you are part of, whether you notice it or not. The misunderstanding that you must be something, do something, or become someone before you can truly live is a story the world tells, a quiet trap that keeps your attention on absence rather than presence. And it is here, in the gap between what you think life is and what life actually is, that a subtle, almost imperceptible longing begins to awaken. You may feel it in your chest when you pause, alone, and hear silence stretching around you. That tension you sense is not a flaw, it is a signal. It is life itself calling you to remember what it means to exist, to feel the strange, ineffable rhythm of your own being. The man who sees this realizes that every fear, every failure, every restless pursuit was never the obstacle. The obstacle was simply the story he accepted as truth. And once he begins to let go of this story, the world shifts. Actions lose their anxious weight, choices gain clarity, and even solitude is no longer loneliness, but a mirror reflecting the life that has been inside him all along. Before we move further, consider this. By watching this video, by reflecting on these words, you are already taking a step. And if you feel even a flicker of resonance, share it. Comment your thoughts. Let others hear this reflection and subscribe, because the act of noticing, of simply participating in awareness, is contagious. There are men out there like you waiting to realize they are alive, and every comment, every share, every quiet acknowledgement spreads that awakening. Life is speaking, and it wants to be heard. For most of your life, you may have moved through the world thinking that being alive meant being busy, being useful, or being admired. You measured yourself by achievements, by the nods of others, by how well you filled the hours, as if each task and obligation were proof that you existed. Perhaps you chased security, status, or validation, convinced that without them life would collapse, that being seen, recognized, and approved was the evidence of your presence. You convinced yourself that the feeling of emptiness, the restless desire for more, was a personal failing, a weakness to be corrected with effort or distraction. In this state, days merged into nights, accomplishments felt hollow, and the world around you seemed both urgent and distant, like a play you had no lines in, only cues to follow. But what if all of that was an illusion? What if the measuring, the striving, the constant comparison to others had nothing to do with life itself? To be alive is not to perform, not to prove, not to solve the problems life throws at you. Being alive is to be present, to feel the strange miracle of your own existence, to allow the rhythms of your body and mind, your breath and your thoughts to be exactly as they are without judgment. When you first glimpse this truth, it feels almost absurd. How could life, which seemed so heavy with obligation, be so simple, so immediately available, so already complete? And yet, it is, hidden beneath the stories you tell yourself, the endless narrative of not enough, the quiet anxiety that nothing you do will ever satisfy the world or yourself. This awakening does not announce itself with fireworks. It begins subtly, in moments when the noise falls away, in pauses where you notice your heartbeat or the weight of your own body, in a silence that feels deeper than fear or boredom. And the change it brings is profound. What once felt like emptiness transforms into depth. What once felt like isolation becomes a space for clarity. The man who experiences this does not necessarily change his circumstances, yet his perception shifts. Work, relationships, obligations, all are the same, but he moves through them differently, freed from the compulsion to fix or force, grounded in a presence that had been overlooked. And as this awareness grows, so too does the tension between how the world sees you and how you truly are. Others may label you as distant, strange, or unmotivated, judging your calm detachment as indifference or arrogance. Yet inside, you are discovering a vitality they cannot see, a strength born not from control, but from surrender to what is. Each moment becomes richer, every sensation sharper, and the man who was once trapped in habits, distractions, and anxieties now finds that the very life he thought was missing was inside him all along. This is not theory, it is experience, subtle yet undeniable, like the first rays of sunlight warming a cold room, revealing what was always there, unseen. Consider the patterns you have followed, the routines you have accepted without question, the invisible contracts with the world that dictated how you should behave, who you should be, and what you should desire. For years, perhaps decades, you believed that approval, recognition, and success were the markers of a life well lived. You bent to the expectations of family, society, friends, and even strangers, allowing your choices to be dictated by invisible rules, convinced that deviation would lead to failure or rejection. Every habit, every attachment, every fear of judgment seemed logical, necessary, unavoidable. You did not realize that these structures were not truths, but stories you had agreed to, silent contracts written by others and reinforced by your own compliance. The revelation comes slowly, almost imperceptibly. You begin to question the foundations of your behavior. Why do I chase what I do not desire? Why do I fear what may never come? Why do I measure my worth against the reflection in someone else's eyes? These questions are not rhetorical. They are a lens, a tool for breaking the hypnotic patterns that have kept you unaware of your own aliveness. And as you observe these illusions, you see that they rely on your participation. They are fragile constructs that exist only because you feed them, only because you believe in the necessity of striving, comparison, and performance. The moment you step back, even slightly, the illusions begin to dissolve, and with them, the suffocating weight of obligation, expectation, and self-judgment. With each step away from these silent agreements, life gains depth and color. Decisions are no longer filtered through fear or validation, but through a quiet attunement to what truly resonates within you. The anxiety that once drove every action begins to soften, replaced by a curious attention to the present, a willingness to simply be. And yet this transformation is not without consequence. To the outside world, you may appear distant, even unapproachable. Friends may comment on your changed attitude. Colleagues may perceive you as detached, and family might struggle to understand the calm independence that now guides your choices. Their perception is a mirror of the old world, a world you have begun to see differently. Inside, however, a new order emerges. Freed from the invisible chains of expectation, your attention turns inward, and there you find clarity. The mundane becomes sacred, the ordinary extraordinary. Each breath, each glance, each interaction carries a weight and a subtle beauty that was invisible before. You are no longer a puppet of circumstance or approval, but a man present, engaged, fully alive in a way that cannot be judged, measured, or diminished. This is not a fleeting insight, but a shift in perception so profound that it redefines the meaning of your existence. Life is no longer about chasing or fearing. It is about noticing, participating, and feeling the currents of being that flow beneath the surface of everyday appearances. As you move deeper into this awareness, you notice the widening gap between how the world sees you and who you have become. To friends, family, and colleagues, you may seem aloof, unpredictable, even stubborn. They might whisper that you have changed, that you are no longer the person they knew, that you are distant or cold. Their eyes search for the old patterns, the familiar reactions, the predictable ambitions that once defined you, but you no longer respond to those cues in the same way. This perception, however, is merely a reflection of their own attachment to illusions. They see only the surface because they cannot perceive the profound recalibration happening within you. Inside, the reality is the opposite of distance. You are not detached from life, but attuned to it in a clarity that few can recognize. Every conversation, every silence, every gesture carries a richness you never noticed before. The man who once measured himself by external metrics now measures his existence by resonance, by presence, by the subtle vibrations of life itself. There is an honesty that emerges here, a freedom from pretense, from trying to fit into molds designed by others. And paradoxically, this honesty, this quiet strength, can feel threatening to those who have not awakened. They interpret your authenticity as arrogance or strangeness, unaware that your calm independence is a natural consequence of seeing life without the distortions of fear and expectation. This tension between appearance and essence is a crucial turning point. The world may label you, may attempt to contain you within its narratives, yet you are no longer participating in those narratives. Every expectation that once weighed you down is now a distant echo. The man you were, the man desperate for approval, frantic for control, is replaced by someone capable of moving through existence with a steady awareness, accepting each moment as it comes. The judgments of others no longer bind you. They are mere background noise against the symphony of your awakening. And as you embrace this paradox, the subtle power of being alive, truly alive, begins to manifest in all dimensions of your life, from decisions to relationships, from work to solitude. Even mundane acts are transformed. Eating, walking, speaking, or sitting in silence are no longer ordinary. They become opportunities to notice the life flowing through you, to honor the simple miracle of presence. And this transformation is not a withdrawal from the world, but a deeper engagement with it. You begin to move through life with a rhythm and clarity that others cannot impose or understand. The man who once feared failure now experiences it as a teacher, not a judgment. The man who once sought constant validation now feels it from the simple act of being. Life itself becomes a companion, not a challenge. And every subtle movement, every breath is evidence that you are not merely existing, you are profoundly alive, even if the world has not yet noticed. Now, consider the ideas that once weighed heavily on you: weakness, failure, emptiness, and loss. Society teaches that these are states to escape, to avoid, to hide from at all costs. We are told that weakness is shameful, that emptiness is evidence of a life wasted, and that loss defines our inadequacy. But what if all of these so-called flaws are actually doors, thresholds to understanding life more deeply? The man who has begun to awaken sees these experiences not as punishments, but as guides. Every moment of emptiness, every failure, every wound points toward the vastness beneath appearances, to the core of being that was always present, even when you could not feel it. The things you once feared as signs of weakness become proof of your engagement with life, proof that you are alive enough to feel, to notice, to suffer, and therefore to grow. Emptiness is no longer a void, but a canvas, a space where clarity emerges. Loss, which once felt unbearable, now illuminates what truly matters, stripping away illusions and distractions until only the essence of life remains. Failure, once a source of shame, becomes an intimate teacher, showing the boundaries of control, the futility of chasing external validation, and the inevitability of impermanence. The man who embraces this perspective begins to feel a freedom previously unimaginable, a freedom not granted by circumstances, but claimed from within, from the recognition that life's meaning is not something to capture or conquer, but something to notice, to experience directly, and to inhabit fully. Even desire, long mistaken for the engine of fulfillment, transforms under this awareness. What once drove anxiety, comparison, and endless striving now becomes a subtle awareness, a curiosity about life's unfolding, a recognition of beauty without attachment. Pleasure and pain are no longer enemies or masters. They are indicators, expressions of the living moment, neither permanent nor essential, yet deeply revealing. The man who awakens sees that the oscillation between joy and suffering is not an imbalance to correct, but the rhythm of life itself. To accept it is to step into alignment with existence, to move with the flow rather than resist it, and in doing so, to reclaim the energy wasted on struggle, fear, and regret. And as these familiar concepts are reinterpreted, the man begins to notice subtle changes in the world around him. Relationships shift, not because others are forced to change, but because he interacts differently, more present, less needy, less reactive. Work becomes more meaningful, not because tasks themselves have changed, but because he brings full attention to each moment. Even solitude transforms from isolation to sanctuary, a space where insight deepens, creativity flourishes, and the sense of aliveness intensifies. What once appeared as weakness is power. What seemed empty becomes fertile ground. What felt like loss becomes liberation. And in this layered transformation, the man discovers that life, in all its complexity and uncertainty, is not something to be endured, but something to be fully lived. As this awareness settles into your being, its effects ripple outward in ways subtle yet profound. On the surface, your life may look unchanged to others. Your work, your routines, your social interactions remain, but inside, everything has shifted. Decisions once clouded by fear or expectation are now guided by a clarity that seems effortless. You no longer act to impress, to control, or to belong. You act in alignment with the quiet intelligence of life itself. Even the pressures that once seemed insurmountable, the demands of work, family, or society, lose their oppressive weight, no longer dictating your sense of worth or the measure of your day. You move through obligations with a presence that transforms them into something almost sacred, as if every act, however ordinary, participates in a larger rhythm. This transformation is not solitary. It extends into your interactions. Others may notice a change, even if they cannot define it. You are no longer reactive or defensive. You carry a calm that disarms tension and a depth that invites curiosity. Some may misunderstand this as distance, pride, or detachment, but it is neither. It is a groundedness born from the recognition that life is not a puzzle to be solved, but a current to be felt. In conversations, your words carry weight, not because they are designed to persuade or impress, but because they arise from a presence that has tasted the essential nature of living. Even silence, once feared as loneliness, now speaks volumes, offering space for reflection and connection beyond the superficial. Gradually, the inner and outer aspects of life synchronize. You find freedom in choices you never dared to make before, clarity in moments of confusion, and strength in times of uncertainty. The man who once measured himself by the external markers of achievement now discovers that power resides in awareness, resilience, and the capacity to inhabit each moment fully. Life, once a series of demands and distractions, becomes a living laboratory where each experience teaches, each challenge sharpens, and each pleasure deepens. The anxiety, the fear, the restlessness, they do not disappear entirely, but they lose authority, reduced to signals rather than masters. And in this ongoing unfolding, the man realizes a paradox. By stepping away from the illusions of control and expectation, he gains the very mastery he once sought. By accepting the limits, he discovers freedom. By embracing what he feared as weakness, he uncovers strength. By noticing the life beneath appearances, he claims the vitality that had always been his. This is the culmination of awakening, the way presence transforms ordinary existence into an extraordinary experience. Each breath, each glance, each silent pause becomes a reminder that life is not waiting for something external to grant it meaning. It is here, always, within and around you, ready to be known, felt and lived in its raw, uncompromising, undeniable reality. In the end, what once seemed like isolation reveals itself as clarity. What looked like weakness is now power, and what felt like loss transforms into liberation. The man who feared being unseen, who believed life was a constant chase for approval, discovers that his truest presence has always been enough. Every struggle, every anxious pursuit, every restless night was a prelude, guiding him toward this awareness. Life does not abandon you, it does not withhold. It simply asks you to notice, to awaken to the currents beneath appearances, to allow yourself to exist fully without apology or pretense. The freedom you sought externally has always been available internally, waiting for the moment when you stop participating in the illusions that obscure it. You may look around and feel that the world has not changed, that people do not understand your calm, that judgments persist. Yet these external observations matter far less than the transformation within. You are no longer bound by the expectations of others or the definitions of a society obsessed with doing rather than being. Your presence, grounded in the subtle rhythms of life, radiates a quiet strength that cannot be measured but can be felt. In this way, the man who once feared being overlooked now inhabits a life fully alive, where each moment carries depth, each sensation is noticed, and each experience is embraced with both humility and certainty. So recognize this. Being alive is not about conquest, acquisition, or validation. It is about presence, awareness, and acceptance of the pulse of existence that flows through you. And as you continue this journey, know that your life, in all its seeming ordinariness, is extraordinary. By seeing clearly, by breathing fully, by simply being, you participate in the miracle of living itself. And as you reflect on this, I invite you to share it, to comment with your own experiences or insights, and to subscribe for more reflections that remind us all of what it truly means to be alive. Every word, every interaction, every acknowledgement spreads awareness, helping others discover the life they may have forgotten was already theirs, waiting quietly, always to be known.